He's back to pass. Pressure coming. He's going to get hit in the end zone. That's going to be a safety.
It's now time for Gridiron, State of the Union.
Another touchdown, Porter Ridge, and they've gone up. The score is 23-17.
Presented by DMR Reconstruction, North Carolina's leader in quality insurance restoration services, with crews on standby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. DMR Reconstruction has your restoration needs covered. Give them a call at 704-327-4028.
He's going to hand it off to Byram. Byram on the right-hand side. He's going to be into the end zone. Touchdown, Monroe.
Gridiron State of the Union is your insider's look each week into Union County High School football.
Malcolm fires one off, and it's into the end zone. Touchdown, Piedmont.
Now we head into the DMR Reconstruction Studio and your host, Brian Stevenson.
It's week 2 of the high school football season, and after the first games of the year, teams now know how they stack up against real competition. Hello everyone, and welcome to Gridiron State of the Union. I'm your host, Brian Stevenson. Last week, Cuthbertson, Weddington, Forest Hills, and Monroe picked up wins, while Sun Valley, Piedmont, Parkwood, Porter Ridge, Marvin Ridge, Central Academy, and Union Academy all started 2014 in the loss column. This week, teams get a chance to regroup and make adjustments. So let's take a look at the matchups for week 2 in our trip around Union, and we started off tonight with Chris Rogers.
Monroe Redhawks will try to go 2-0 this week when they take the road against the Anson County Bearcats. Monroe cruised to a 50-7 win over Lexington last week. Quarterback Upwall scored 3 times on the night with runs of 13, 21, and 50 yards. He threw for another score also. The defense looked really strong, pitching a shutout. The only score for Lexington came off a kickoff return. Their opponent this week, Anson County, lost a heartbreaker last week in overtime in Marshville to the Forest Hills Yellow Jackets 7-6. Forest Hills, the subject of our next game, as they travel to Weddington tonight. The Jackets won their overtime game with Anson last week on a Zacchaeus Roy touchdown and made extra point. The Jackets will need a strong defense tonight if they are going to be victorious against their Week 2 opponent, Weddington, arguably one of the top teams in the county. The Warriors had a Week 1 31-28 victory over Audrey Hill, Weddington scoring a fourth-quarter field goal to get the win. It should be a good matchup Friday night in Weddington. Cuthbertson hits the road to Hickory Ridge for Week 2. The Cavaliers had an impressive 34-9 victory over Parkwood last week. Quarterback Austin Kendall was 22 of 34 for 320 yards, threw for 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Brian McIlvain had 13 catches for 193 yards and 2 scores. Cuthbertson's opponent, Hickory Ridge, won their opener last week in a back-and-forth contest versus Piedmont, 35-28. Next up in our look around Union is Derek Skinner.
Central Academy will try to get in the win column tonight when they host Highland Tech. Last week, the Cougars lost a close one to North Stanley, 26-24. The Cougars started out strong, scoring 22 points in the first half, but they could only manage a safety in the fourth quarter. The Comets, on the other hand, scored their 26 points in the second and third quarters. Tonight, the Cougar offense will try to put 4 complete quarters together against Highland Tech. This will be the first game of the season for the Rams. Next up, the Sun Valley Spartans. Sun Valley had a good showing in Week 1, but came up short to Huff last week, 34-20. The Spartans' Albert Funderburk ran the ball 25 times for 194 yards and a touchdown. The defense had some bright moments, recording 6 sacks for the game. Friday will be a long road trip for Sun Valley as they travel nearly 100 miles to Hope County. Hope County won their opener last week. Now we take a look at our weekly Game of the Week with Sideline Mike.
The WIXE Game of the Week features 2 rivals that are just a few miles apart. Piedmont travels to Porter Ridge for a non-conference matchup. Both teams are coming off Week 1 losses as Piedmont fell to Hickory Ridge 35-28 last week. Quarterback Cameron Tripp will try to lead the Panther offense against the 4A Pirates. Porter Ridge comes into the game off a Week 1 loss at Mount Tabor. The Pirates only scored 18 points last week and will have to find some offense if they want to win the home opener, which is also the debut of Coach Bev. Tune in for all the action as our WIXE Game of the Week coverage on 11:90 a.m. begins at 7 p.m. on Friday. Now for Game 2 of our WIXE doubleheader, we head to Reed, Alexander.
Game 2 of our WIXC doubleheader features Union Academy at Parkwood. Both teams suffered Week 1 losses. Parkwood fell to Cuthbertson. Trey Butler was a bright spot for the Rebels. He had a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown and 15 rushes for 71 yards. He also had a 95-yard touchdown called back. Union Academy, on the other hand, hits the road for the very first time. Last week, they fell to Carolina Pride, 39-13. Quarterback Jake Cottle completed 50% of his passes, but the Cardinals couldn't do much with the ball on the ground, only gaining 48 yards for the game as a team. See who gets the win when you tune in for game number 2 of our WIXC doubleheader right after the Piedmont-Porter Ridge game on 1190. Now we go back to the studio and Brian Stevenson.
Thanks a lot, Reed. We'll actually hear more from Reed Alexander when we return to Gridiron State of the Union. He's my guest tonight in the Roundtable segment.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Gridiron State of the Union, brought to you exclusively by DMR Reconstruction. Fire, water, wind, or mold damage, they are your go-to source. And if you're thinking about remodeling, from the tip top of the roof to the bottom of the foundation, they can handle it for you. Windows, doors, paint, floors, vinyl siding, they do it all at DMR Reconstruction. Stop by and visit their showroom on Highway 74 in Marshville, North Carolina. You'll be glad you did. 704-327-4028, 327-4028, and they hope you're enjoying the Gridiron State of the Union, brought to you by DMR Reconstruction.
Welcome back to Gridiron State of the Union. Time now for our Roundtable segment. And I'm joined by my broadcast partner, Reed Alexander. And Reed, Monroe takes on Lexington last week. We had that game, and Monroe just dominated Lexington Yellow Jackets pretty handily, 50-7.
That's right. We kind of had a feeling that it was going to be a blowout when we first started the game, but thank you for having me on your roundtable. Monroe looked good, especially their defense. You know, we've talked about that at the end of the game last Friday, about how their defense just kind of smothered the Lexington Yellow Jackets. I mean, I think they might have had just 45 positive yards on the entire game and maybe 7 plays that were actually positive. So the defense was stifling. Isaiah Thomas for the Monroe Redhawks looked awesome. This as a linebacker, you know, a couple big sacks. Lexington had a hard time. My concern is the offense got some unnecessary penalties.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Going, you know, definitely week 1 mistakes. You don't anticipate a Coach Sal team to make those mental mistakes, having a lot of penalties in week 2. And getting back to your point about the defense, they did a great job. Isaiah Thomas, you mentioned him, had 2 sacks and then 1 each for Bryant, Conrad, and Sturdivant. So 5 total sacks for the Redhawks on the night. They did a great job and didn't give up. Coincidentally, that 1 touchdown that Lexington had was on special teams. So no points given up by the Monroe defense so far in 2014.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me. That was a big kickoff return for the Yellow Jackets, but Monroe didn't falter. Monroe didn't let that momentum shift happen at all. Monroe, the defense, was still holding them to negative yardage even after that big play.
Well, we're almost out of time here, but let's real quickly take a look. We have Parkwood and Union Academy this week. Union Academy is looking a little thin this year, but we'll be down in Rough Edge covering that one.
The big story coming out of Parkwood last week was Trey Butler. Trey Butler just, you know, he surprised a lot of people. Big plays, Brian. I mean, remind me, he had a few kickoff returns.
Yeah, I think he had one that was for 100 yards, and then he had another play that was quite a long distance that was called back during the night. Trey definitely was the bright spot of the night for them. That one was 15 rushes for 71 yards and then 95-yard touchdown called back. So we'll definitely look forward to seeing him out there tonight. But Reed, it's always a pleasure to have you on the round table, and we will be together, folks. Be listening. Game 2 of the WIXC doubleheader coming up on Friday night right after Game 1. And we'll be right back with the coach of the Yellow Jackets in our Coach's Corner segment right after this on Gridiron State of the Union.
This quick break in the action is brought to you by DMR Reconstruction, the exclusive sponsor of the Gridiron State of the Union. One of these days, you're going to want to do home improvement. New windows, new doors. Maybe you got hardwood floors you want to refinish, or you need new carpet or flooring. DMR Reconstruction is your go-to source. They also specialize in fire, water, wind, and mold damage restoration. They'll even help you deal with the insurance companies. Visit the showroom in Marshville, North Carolina, or give them a call at 704-327-4028, 24/7 for emergencies, 327-4028. Let them know you heard about them here on Wixie. And now back to more of the Gridiron State of the Union, brought to you by DMR Reconstruction.
Welcome back to Gridiron State of the Union, and I'm joined now by the coach of the Forest Hills Yellow Jackets, John Lowry. And Coach, it was a tough one last week, but a win is a win. Tell me about that game and how it all came down.
Our kids played real hard. It was extremely hot. I think it's about 100 degrees on the field when we started the game, and to be quite honest with you, I was hot. I know the kids were, but we played really well defensively. As a matter of fact, both teams did. It looked like both teams left their offense at home. A lot of mistakes, fixable things, but both teams turned the ball over too many times, and we were fortunate enough to keep them out of the end zone, even though we had our backs to the ball several times. So I really tip my hat to our defensive players and our staff. They did a great job of keeping us in the ball game, and then fortunately for us, we were able to score in overtime and kick the extra point after we blocked theirs. And it was an exciting win for our kids. Obviously, it's good to get off on the right foot. I didn't think we played well offensively. I thought we played pretty well defensively, but offensively we need to get back to the drawing board a little bit. So we try to do that this week. We got a tough match coming this week. Weddington's got a really good football team. They do what they're supposed to do, and they do it well. We've got to play better offensively and hope that our defense can play as well as they did last week.
Well, let's go back and break that down from last week just a little bit. Tell me how you felt like CJ played. I know it was good to have him back in a game situation and just to kind of have your guys back on the field, even though it wasn't like you probably wanted them to perform.
Well, it was exciting for CJ and for us too. He's a quality back, and having him back on the field means a lot to our offense. He had a couple of real good runs last week, but they pretty much stymied us up front, and so that held him back a little bit. But he made some big plays for us, and we expect some big things out of him. So having to get through his first game after sitting out almost the entire season last year, obviously we're excited about that, and we see some really good things from him.
You know that Friday night will be a tough one. Weddington's one of the top 4A teams in the state last year. Tell me about what you've seen on film and what it's going to take to get over the hump and get win number 2.
They played really well last week against an Audrey Kell team, but they did show some things that we hope we can capitalize on. They won a ball game, I think 31-28 or something like that. They had a big lead, and then they gave up the lead. So there's obviously some things that you can do against them, or at least worked last week, and we certainly hope to be able to capitalize on that. The biggest thing about playing Weddington is they're well coached. The kids get where they're supposed to be. They're smart. They have a great scheme. And I can tell you before we start the game that they have a major advantage in the kicking game over us. Their kicker is really, really good. He's got a long leg. And when he kicks off, we're going to start on the 20. He kicks it in the end zone all the time. So that's a little bit disadvantage, but we've changed our style. We're going to be more of a ball possession type team, and so we hope to use all our time and to keep them off the field, and hopefully things will work out right for us.
Thanks a lot to Coach John Lowry for being our Coach's Corner guest this week. It's now time to take a look at the UC Preps UC Top 3. Coming in at number 3 are the Sun Valley Spartans, number 2, the Forest Hills Yellow Jackets, and number 1 in the UC Top 3, the Weddington Warriors.
Time for extra points.
In my extra points tonight, last week I saw a dominating performance from the Monroe Red Hawk defense. Even in a year where they lost some key talent to graduation, Coach Johnny Sal has this year's team looking just as strong as ever. But the next few weeks will be a gauntlet with Anson, Cuthbertson, Weddington, Charlotte Christian, and Sun Valley on the horizon. Come out of that stretch with a winning mark, and it will set the tone for just how good the Red Hawks could be this year. And with that, we are all out of time. Special thanks to DMR Reconstruction for sponsoring the show, and thank you for listening. We have examined the state of our union, and I can report it is good. Good night, everybody.